If you watched one of my recent videos or played the game yourself, you would have experienced what it's like to pilot a Podracer through the incredibly detailed landscape of the Mos Espa Raceway. This is Star Wars Racer Remastered, a single-leveled game made by a fan using the breathtaking Unreal Engine 4. After experiencing its recreation of the original Mos Espa map from the 1999 game, today I thought it'd be a great idea to compare the two games and experience just how incredible this new game actually is. Even though it does feel like a bit of a tech demo and has some obvious flaws and bugs, some of these are what make this game great. Like being able to drive on the stadium stands. So let's do this. 1999 Star Wars Racer versus 2019 Racer Remastered. Hey everyone, it's Andrew. Now if you will, please join me once again as I travel back in time. The year was 1999 and I was given Star Wars Racer on PC as a gift. Now if you remember from my last video, on my Windows 95, the game never worked properly. I couldn't save my game, I could never save my progress of unlocking different maps, and often it would randomly freeze and crash my computer. As a result, Tatooine being the first map available in the game, I would pilot my Podracer on this map over and over again, hoping my game wouldn't crash. So when I experienced the map I was so familiar with, reimagined in Unreal Engine 4, I was taken on a nostalgia trip I didn't realize would unlock a part of my childhood I'd pretty much forgotten about. Okay, so both the old game and the new start pretty much the same. In the old game, the camera pans around your Podracer, and in the new one, doesn't. Also in the old one, we have these hovering lights which indicate the start of the race, and in the new game, they're fixed to the bridge at the start line, replicating the ones in the movie. Also the countdown that appears on the screen at the start of the race. In the old game, the countdown appears in a Star Wars language I don't know the name of, and in the new game are just plain old regular boring numbers. Tatooine's two suns are also in the same position in both maps, as well as some of the rock landmarks around the map. Although some of the rocks in the new game are much fancier. Podracer 2019, a review, fancy rocks. Now in the old Podracer game, you can race against 11 other AI opponents, all with different pods seen in the Phantom Menace, which you can also unlock and pilot in the game. However, in the new game, you only have the option of racing against one other pod, and it's the same pod you're piloting, except red and black. You stole my design, man! That's what Anakin would have said. And you stole my pod, it's my pod, bro. Now let's talk about the tracks themselves. They both begin the same next to the stadium stands, but as soon as you round that first corner, they become quite different. In the old game, the track winds through a wide valley with what looks to be some Tatooine houses and buildings up above. The new game takes you through a narrower valley which opens up to a rocky curvy section, then onto a quick straight for the break in the rocks up ahead. The old game also takes you through a tighter break in the rocks, which ends in an even tighter opening, requiring some extra piloting precision. This can be achieved by turning your Podracer on its side, just like Anakin does in the film. In the old game, you can turn your pod on both of its sides. In the new game though, you can't do this, or at least I couldn't find a way of doing it. I tried pressing all the buttons on my keyboard, including Alt F4, but nothing happened. And yes, I have a crappy keyboard, I know, I actually use a Mac, so for all you PC nerds out there, yes, I'm a Mac user. I have this keyboard, this is my much better keyboard. Bro. If you haven't noticed by now, the HUD in both games is very similar, with the laps, time, and position being displayed at the top of the screen. Also the same are the speedometers. You can also boost in both games by holding forwards to build this bar, then pressing the boost button, funnily enough. In the old game, you can reach a speed of 663, but in the new game, seem to be capable of going much faster than this. I got the pod up to 937. Now, I'm not sure what 663 or 937 are measured in, whether one of these is in miles and the other kilometers, or whether both of them are a Star Wars measurement of speed. Does the Star Wars universe have its own measure of speed? I have no idea. I'm sure one of you will tell me. You may have also noticed that the old game has this engine display, similar to the one Anakin has on his pod in the film. If you crash into obstacles during the race or overheat the engine, this will display varying shades of green, yellow, orange, and red. For example, when you completely destroy one of your engines and try spinning That's a Good Trick, both of these will go red. Now in both games, if you overheat your engine, there's actually a function to repair it. Mid-race, while you're driving, you can fix your engine, just like Anakin did in The Phantom Menace. Spend years building a Podracer at age 10, engine catches fire and overheats mid-race. Anakin fixes it by pushing a few buttons. How did he manage this? Midi-chlorians. Now, one thing I noticed by repairing my pod from the safety and comfort of my pod, didn't even have to make a pit stop, pull over and get out, who has time? Just use your midi-chlorians. Is that both games have some of the same sound effects and voice lines, such as... when you break your pod, and
It's working! It's working! It's working! It's working!
when you repair your pod. Now, one thing the new game doesn't have is this. That's Watto humming the Cantina song. Now, one of my favorite parts of pod racing in general, that wasn't a part of the old game from '99, are these ring formations that you can fly through at high speeds. These are followed by a tunnel section, then a section that appears to be where the Tusken Raiders fire on the pods in the film, then another windy canyon, then a final open sprint to the finish. The racetrack in the fan-made game seems to be much truer to the film. A few other smaller details: both games have third and first person between the engine's view, although the old Podracer game also has a head-on view and a wider third person view. Also, you can look backwards in the old one, which I couldn't find a button for in the new one. Maybe you can do it, but I tried pressing every button on my keyboard, including Alt F4, and didn't get anywhere. Now let's talk about how rigid the games are in actually wanting you to participate in the race. Being a racing game, you'd think the game would really encourage you to actually race. And this is true for the old game. You can, however, turn around and go backwards, head on to the other pod racers, and try and take out Sebulba. But that's where the fun begins and ends. The rest of the map has unassailable walls and is fairly empty. In the new fan-made game, however, you can drive your pod pretty much anywhere and have fun exploring the outer reaches of the Tatooine desert until the invisible wall kills you instantly. You can explore sand dunes, drive over different rock formations, cheat your way to the finish line by cutting across the map and showing the clone Anakin pod who the real pod racer is and who the real Anakin is, and don't you dare steal my identity again or I'll have to go full pod racing on your ass. This track even has the service ramp jump.
Skywalker's been forced onto the service ramp.
You can go look at some water vaporators if you're into moisture farming and that kind of thing. You can drive your pod up into the stands and look out over the two suns before knocking one of your engines on a sunshade and exploding. All I was trying to do was say hi to Jabba. You can go drive behind some of the buildings, and even enter what looks like the pit stop or workshop where Qui-Gon makes a bet with Watto for Anakin's freedom. Qui-Gon is such a shifty character when you take a step back and think about it. Always trying to use the Force to manipulate people to get his way. Also, I used to have a die like this one, not sure where it is now. I colored the sides blue and red myself. With both of these games compared, and now that you have a good grasp on what the phrase "now this is pod racing" means, I want to talk about one of the greatest representations of pod racing in another video game. This is LEGO Star Wars: The Complete Saga. And yes, although this game perhaps lacks the realism of pod racing found in the 1999 version and the new recreation, because pod racing was so realistic to begin with, it adds fun details to the pod racing experience that the other games lack. For example, following the cave section, a short cutscene takes place where Tusken Raiders perched up on the hill fire down at the ground ahead, causing you to swerve your pod racer in and out of their blasts. There's also a section where you drive beneath the ring formations. You know how much I love these. There are boost ramps which propel you forwards, a detailed stadium with an actual crowd that you can't drive all over, a cutscene where Sebulba and this dude with the three eyes hold their fists up to one another, then Sebulba basically murders him. There are pits in the ground you have to avoid, a service ramp that can only be unlocked by coming back and playing the level with another vehicle, then boulders fall down the track at the part with the Tusken Raiders, and you have to somehow try dodge all of these. And not to mention there's heaps of things you can run into that give you Lego coins. This game adds another dimension to pod racing the other games don't necessarily have. It also has a very disheveled, depressed looking Qui-Gon, which is not something you really see anywhere else. Perhaps there's much more to Qui-Gon's personality than any of us actually know. Brought together, what I think is so great about all three of these games is that each brings its own strengths, uniqueness, and fun to pod racing. Whether you're trying to smash into Sebulba for forcing you to use midichlorians to fix your pod mid-race after he sabotaged it, or you're dodging gunfire from Tusken Raiders, or you're reliving your childhood in an incredible reimagined world, there's fun to be had in each of these experiences. So which game are you the biggest fan of? Which game causes you to say the line, "Now this is pod racing"? Let me know in the comments. And if you're a huge fan of this new pod racing game, I made a video with a bit more of a detailed look at the game, like how Anakin's not actually sitting in the pod. You can watch this video here, and thanks for watching this. My name's Andrew. Now this is pod racing. Now this is pod racing. Now this is pod racing. This is pod racing. Now this is pod racing.
Stay bombastic.